Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the circadian rhythm and how to utilize it for your baby's sleep. A little bit about me, just so you know where I'm talking from. I am an internationally qualified baby and toddler sleep consultant. That means I studied the science of sleep and learned how to apply it to babies and toddlers. And sleep is constantly changing. So it changes right from newborns to babies to toddlers and then through adults. So that's why we apply different things to different ages. I'm also a Catholic mom to two girls under two. It's my oldest, Ivory, and my youngest, Thea. I'm a stay-at-home mom mainly, but I also run my business, Snuggle and Sleep. I have another sleep consultant that works alongside me, Angela. So if any of you guys decide to work one-on-one with us, some of you might end up working with Angela. She is also a stay-at-home mom. She has 3 kids, including twins, and she is an awesome sleep consultant. She's also certified with Baby Sleep Consultant. You can see our certification logo at the bottom. She has the same certifications that I do. So moving in, just so you guys know, at the end of the masterclass, I'm going to be giving a free gift to everyone. So if you stay through, we'll make sure you get that coupon code if you decide to work with us after this. So I'm just going to dive straight in because we don't have a lot of time tonight. It's just going to be a 30-minute one. I just wanted to make sure it was enough time that I could give you enough information that was going to be useful, but also short enough that I was going to be cutting into your evening. I know if it's too long, then you guys are busy, you have children, bedtime, dinner, all these things happening. So what is the circadian rhythm? You've probably heard this word a lot. It also can be called the biological clock, the master biological clock, the body clock, your internal clock, your brain clock. All of those words that you may have heard, they all mean the circadian rhythm. It tells us when to be sleepy and when to be awake. So for a baby, they're going to need multiple naps a day. So the circadian rhythm is going to be telling them at what time their body should go to sleep and what time it should be awake. Obviously, as adults, we don't generally nap, though some of you might like to take your siestas. So your circadian rhythm is going to be telling you at what times you should also fall asleep and what times you should wake up. It takes lots of cues from us. So it's actually centered in a part of the brain that learns from us and then gives the signals back to us. There's lots of things that influence the circadian rhythm, but these are some of the main things that influence it. So these are things that we can also use. So light is a really, really big one. Darkness, sunshine, artificial lights, night lights, any of these things that you might use in your home, being outside again with the sunshine, coming inside to the darkness, these really, really influence the circadian rhythm. They really tell your body when to go to sleep and when to wake up. Also hormones, melatonin you may have heard of before, that is a sleep hormone. Serotonin tends to be your happy hormone. Cortisol is your stress hormone, though it doesn't always mean you're stressed if you have cortisol. These hormones are very, very closely related to how your circadian rhythm works. So there's things that we can do, and we'll get into this in a minute, to produce those hormones in our bodies and in our babies' bodies that will then influence the circadian rhythm. Other things that influence it will be breast milk. So fun fact for those who don't know it, but breast milk has melatonin in it. Because breast milk is changing constantly throughout the day, I mean, it has so many things that it gives your babies. One of the things that when it gets towards evening is that breast milk then has melatonin in it. So say if you're pumping your milk, it's best to write if it's a morning milk or an evening milk. So that way you can choose to give the evening milk to your baby on the next day when you're pumping to give it to them, because that milk does have melatonin in it. Food also plays a role. So that could be solids, formula if you're not breastfeeding. If the formula is not going to have melatonin in it because you're going to use like the same can of formula. We don't have day formula and night formula. Well, some brands might, but that's not the regular one that you usually get. So if you're using formula and, solids for your baby, those things also play a role in your circadian rhythm and your baby's circadian rhythm. Activities as well. So how active your baby is, how active you are, these things also can influence your circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is quite interesting. It actually starts to develop in the womb. So the receptors start developing in the brain in your baby. And it's also, they've done studies to show that the baby starts to respond to light, and that also starts to develop the circadian rhythm. So it actually starts developing quite early that your baby starts these sleep and awake cycles. I know a lot of people say that, when they fall asleep as the mother, the baby starts to wake up. That's quite common. So you can see there's a pattern developing even in the womb. keeps developing after birth. The first 3 months when your baby is a newborn is quite chaotic because there's not much of a circadian rhythm. The brain is just taking a lot of information in and it's just using all of it and it's developing, but it's just not complete. So that's why newborn sleep tends to be a little bit all over the place, because babies don't remember things day to day, or newborns, sorry, don't remember things day to day. And the circadian rhythm isn't fully developed. So things that you do every day are going to change how your baby responds when they fall asleep, when they wake up, which makes a little bit more sense why, your newborn might be having very, very chaotic sleep. We start to see more definite patterns around 3 to 4 months. So melatonin that is coming through birth, the baby will get that from the mother, and there won't be any melatonin in the breast milk until the baby is about 6 to 8 weeks old. Changes depending on the baby. So once you start getting that melatonin in the breast milk, that plays a huge role. If you're formula feeding, your baby will start to develop their own melatonin as well. But we can pretty safely say that by most babies of 3 to 4 months, they'll be producing their own melatonin. So that really helps you to see some really good patterns when they turn 3 to 4 months. And then people always talk about the sleep regression that happens at 4 months. But some people are starting to say like sleep progression instead of regression, because it doesn't necessarily mean your baby is going backwards. It just means that once their brain is starting to take those signals in and produce this pattern and this circadian rhythm, sleep is going to change a lot. So for some people, that your newborn might be sleeping very well, like in a swaddle, or you might be nursing them to sleep. These things you might have decided, your baby might love those things. And then they hit 4 months and they have this, what looks like a regression, because they're not sleeping well anymore. But it just means that their body is developing and it's starting to pick up these patterns, and they might need more independence. Usually that's just a huge sign at 4 months, is that your baby wants to have a little bit more independence when they fall asleep. They don't want to be as attached to you, but because they don't know how to have the independence, and they just end up crying and being very upset and waking up a lot. And then the circadian rhythm is fully developed between 6 to 12 months. So sleep really just develops a lot in that first year of life. And then naps start to drop a little bit more in that second year. Usually we will keep that toddler nap up until between 3 to 4 years of age. And by that point, the sleep cycles for a toddler are pretty much the same as an adult sleep cycle. So that's why, you can end up dropping that nap, because they don't need as much sleep during the day. They will need more sleep at night though. So things that we can do to help our circadian rhythm, set regular patterns, is a really, really easy one. Of course, as a busy mom, it's really, really hard to have schedules. But you don't have to have a schedule. You just have to have at least a routine. So for example, a really easy routine is your baby wakes up, you then feed them, you then let them play or do tummy time or whatever activities, and then you put them to sleep again. So what can sometimes happen here is that pattern can get messed up, because the baby will wake up. We might feed them, we might give them a snack, or we might not feed them. Then we'll do some random stuff with them, some tummy time, and then we'll often just feed them to sleep. And what can happen, as a little side note here, if you're always feeding your baby to sleep, and there's nothing wrong in general with feeding your baby to sleep, but if you're always feeding your baby to sleep, they might not be getting a full feed, which then they'll fall asleep because they're tired and their body is ready to sleep, but because they're not actually full, they'll then wake up in 30 minutes or 20 minutes. And again, a little side note there, if you're breastfeeding your baby, breast milk has 2 kinds of milk. So it has the fore milk and the hind milk. The fore milk is very, very hydrating. It's quite watery. If you've ever pumped your breast milk, you'll see it's quite clear. It's like a whitish kind of clearish liquid. And then if you keep pumping and you empty out your breast completely, you'll see the second part of the milk, the fore milk, is very thick and yellow. And that's the very nutritious, heavy milk. So that's the milk we really want our babies to get. So the fore milk is great. It does hydrate them. It's almost like giving them water. But the hind milk, which is the second part of milk that they will get, is where you're really going to nourish them. And that is going to help them sleep longer. So that's why I always suggest when your baby wakes up, give them a feed immediately. If they have reflux or, gassiness, and you want to break up that feed, that's totally fine. So you can start the feed, give 5-10 minute break and then finish the feed. Just make sure they're emptying one breast completely before moving on to the next breast. We don't want to snack from both sides, because then they'll just get lots of that fore milk, which is that really watery milk. So setting regular patterns. So again, just choosing a pattern and sticking with it, routines. We can also influence it by the choices we make with, for example, going outside. So sunshine is a really big part of setting your circadian rhythm. So one of the things that you can do is when your baby first wakes up in the morning, if you're trying to help them establish a wake up time, is take them outside just for a couple minutes. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. I know it's really hot for some of us. I'm in Florida, so it's really, really hot here right now. But even if you're in another state or another country, It can be really hot in the morning. So it's not like you need to be outside for a full hour. It's not like you need to be spending time on the, taking a walk or anything. If you do that, fantastic, but that's not what I'm talking about here. All you need to do is just take your baby into the sunlight for 2 minutes, and that will start to send the signals to their brain that it's now daytime, it's wake up time. So then tomorrow, their brain will remember that signal, and it will say it's, you choose 7 a.m. as your wake up time. You go outside at 7 a.m. for 2 minutes. The next day, their brain will remember that. And every day that you do that and take them outside at 7 a.m., their brain will remember, 7 a.m. is when sunlight hits my body. That's when my body needs to wake up. So those kind of choices that we can make. We don't want to work against it. So, for example, trying to push bedtime to like midnight or something, which is not going to work with their bodies, it's not going to be helping circadian rhythm, and it's just going to, the baby's brain signals are going to get very confused by that, because you're going to be keeping them awake, which is telling the circadian rhythm, hey, this is awake time, but it's going to be dark. And so their body is going to go, but it's darkness and we need melatonin, but we're being kept awake. So it's going to be confused. Another one that often comes up is people try to put their babies to nap during the daytime in the light. Now, it's not a huge no-no. If your baby naps fine in the daylight, I'm not saying don't do it. But if you're struggling asleep, and you're probably struggling asleep if you're here tonight, one of the things that you don't need to do is put your baby to sleep in the light. People do it to like stop day-night confusion, which is a real thing. It's not super common. It's usually something we see, that happens in newborns because they've just come out of the womb and circadian rhythm really isn't developed yet at all. Most babies by at least 4 months, they will recognize day and night. And so we don't need to worry about putting them to sleep in the daylight. We want to make sure we're getting that melatonin, which helps if we nap in the dark. So now that you understand a little bit of what the circadian rhythm is and how you can, help the circadian rhythm, now we're going to talk about using the circadian rhythm to help our babies sleep better. So there's certain patterns that happen throughout the day. You can think of them as kind of waves that go up and down. And they're usually based on darkness and light, temperature, and hormones. So again, the hormones are going to be the melatonin and serotonin. So we're going to go just to babies. We're not talking about adults here. So if you've read about, adult sleep science, this does not apply. This is for babies. So we see natural windows of melatonin between 9 and 10 a.m., 12 and 2 p.m., and 6 and 8 p.m. And you're probably looking at those times and going, oh yeah, those are the times that most people suggest for naps. And there's a reason we suggest them for naps, because we want to ride on that natural wave of melatonin. So something else that also plays into the circadian rhythm is mentioning the sunshine again. So when you take your baby outside and sunlight hits their body, it helps produce serotonin, which is like their happy hormone. When you then take your baby inside into complete darkness, I'm not talking about just like a darker room, I'm talking about a pitch black room with like blackout curtains and everything, no light coming in, their body will start to turn that serotonin into melatonin. So that's just another reason that we want to put our babies to sleep during the day and at night in complete darkness, because it helps their body produce melatonin. Then we also have melatonin happening from breast milk and from a natural sleep cycle that's happening throughout the day. So if we're wanting to utilize the circadian rhythm and we're trying to get our babies on a better nap schedule, it makes sense to use those natural sleep windows that the circadian rhythm is already using. So again, the 9 to 10 a.m., the 12 to 2 p.m., and the 6 to 8 p.m. Now, of course, your baby might be waking up really early. They might be ready for a nap before 9 a.m. Often for younger babies, even if they're waking up between 6 and 7, they might need to go down by 8:30. But if they're having a 1.5 hour nap in the morning, that should take them through to 8:30, from 8:30 to 10 a.m., which is in the natural sleep cycle there. And then for the midday nap, you might not be starting at 2 because the melatonin is really good between 12 and 2. So for a toddler, we might be doing a nap starting at 1 p.m., but we're still riding on that wave of melatonin. And then that's why we always suggest bedtime happens between 6 and 8. 6:30 for younger babies, usually it pushes out to 7, and then 7:30 for a toddler. 8 p.m. is quite a late bedtime. But if you're working on an 8 p.m. bedtime, then we'll want to push the wake up time to 8 a.m. because babies do need between 11 to 12 hours of sleep a night. That's toddlers, which might be surprising to some of you if you have a baby who's not sleeping that much overnight. It's not saying anything is wrong with your baby. It just means that they might need to be taught, for their bodies to be taught to sleep a little bit longer, because the healthiest amount of sleep for a baby and a toddler is between 11 and 12 hours overnight. So that's why we'll see sleep routines that the baby goes to bed at 7 and wakes up at 7, or if they go to bed at 8, they'll wake up at 8. And then a baby who has feeds overnight, they will look like they have longer sleep. So you might have a bedtime of 6 p.m. and a wake up time of 7 or 7:30, but if they're awake during the night for feeds, that is cutting into their sleep time. The second thing to utilize circadian rhythm is to help build sleep pressure or sleep debt. You might have heard those words. And we do that by using awake windows. So just to quickly break that down. So a baby who gets up again, 7 a.m., I'm just going to pick that, it's a very easy time to use. The time between their wake up time and their first nap, their body is going to be building sleep pressure. So we want to use the right amount of sleep pressure. So if your baby wakes up at 7 and they're acting tired by 8 a.m., maybe they are tired because the day before they fell asleep at 8, and maybe every day they've been falling asleep at 8 a.m. So now the circadian rhythm has learnt that 8 a.m. is their nap time. But 1 hour of awake time for, say, a 6-month-old baby is not enough sleep pressure or sleep debt for them to stay awake, for them to stay asleep for long enough. So they wake up at 7, they're awake for an hour. A circadian rhythm is telling them to fall asleep at 8 o'clock, but because there's not enough sleep pressure or debt, they sleep for 15 minutes and they wake up, and then they don't need a nap for another couple of hours, but they're super grumpy because it really wasn't enough sleep. It was just a short nap. It didn't even get them into a deep sleep cycle. So we want to build the sleep pressure to utilize the circadian rhythm properly. So using an age-appropriate sleep schedule at 6 months, we would be, waking up at 7 and going to have a nap at 8:45 or 9 o'clock, and that would be enough sleep pressure that they could sleep for a full hour. And then the next day, the circadian rhythm will have taken that signal, and it will try to use that nap time again. Temperature is another one. Temperature is not super crazy because most of us have air conditioners and, heaters in winter and everything like that. But a really good rule of thumb for your baby for their temperature is your baby is going to need 1 extra layer than you will need to go to sleep. So if you just think about, if you're wearing pajamas and maybe you have a top sheet and maybe you have like a thin blanket in summer, your baby's going to need an undergarment, maybe that's a onesie, and then they're going to need pajamas over the top to simulate what you're using, and then say like a swaddle or a sleep sack. And you can give them something slightly thicker than yours instead of a whole extra layer. So you could buy a sleep sack that has an extra TOG rating, which is means that it's thicker, like a winter sleep sack, or if it's a summer sleep sack and it might be sleeveless. So you just want to make sure that their body temperature is comfortable for them to sleep, which also signals to the circadian rhythm that it's time to go to sleep. We also see a drop in temperature at nighttime. So giving your babies a bath, it's not just a calming thing. And it's really great to give your babies a bath at night because it is very calming. And then you can do some massaging and lotion, and that helps them get ready for sleep. But it also mimics what's happening outside in the world, which really also helps your circadian rhythm. So giving your baby a bath, when they come out of it, their temperature drops. And that's a really good signal to the circadian rhythm of, all these things together, the light and the darkness and the temperature together is telling the circadian rhythm, this is bedtime. So there's some things that you can use to really help your baby sleep better and to keep signaling to the circadian rhythm, this is the routine that we're using. Now, talking about building a sleep routine, I know a lot of the information I'm really just throwing at you guys tonight. So again, if you have any questions particular to your baby or your toddler, you can email me. You can pop it in the chat. I'll have a look in a minute and see if there's anything in there. But I'm happy to respond to your particular situations as well. So I just wanted to talk about building a sleep routine because I know a lot of you, you're struggling with sleep. Maybe you're struggling with naps during the day. Maybe you're struggling with sleep overnight. So these are some simple things we can do because we don't want to be overwhelmed. I mean, we're already busy. We have a lot going on. You're a mom, so definitely, or you're a dad, so you're definitely overwhelmed. That's just a given. So I want to keep it really simple. Start with an age-appropriate nap routine, and a bedtime routine. You will find all of those on my Instagram. You can also find them on my Facebook if you're on social media at all. You can also access them even if you don't have social media. If you just type in Instagram, snuggle and sleep, it will come up and then you can click on routines. So start with an age-appropriate routine. That's just the easiest thing to build off. So if your baby is 3 to 6 weeks old, there's a routine for 3 to 6 weeks old. If your baby is 8 months old, there's a routine for an 8-month-old. And that's going to be the average for what your baby needs. Now, so we're going to consider age-appropriate awake windows and naps. So that's going to be on the routine. Now we have routine versus schedule. This is going to be up to the temperament of your baby and up to the temperament of you as the parent. So a routine is kind of what I talked about earlier. A routine could be, you wake up, you feed your baby, you let them play, and say they have an awake window of 2 hours. So, they wake up at 7:30, their nap type is 9:30. They wake up at 7, their nap type is 9. It changes every day because it's a routine, but it's not an actual schedule. Their circadian rhythm can still be built off a routine as long as it's in similar times. So we're not going to be so drastic. We're not going to have a wake up time one day of 7 a.m. and the next day 11 a.m. Your baby's just not going to do that anyway. A schedule is when we follow strict times. So your baby wakes up between 7 and 7:10. They go to their first nap between 9 and 9:15. It's very much schedules are based off times, routines are based off awake windows and nap windows. And a window meaning, within 30 minutes, within an hour. So start with that age appropriate schedule, and then follow your baby's sleepy cues. This can get a little tricky because we tend to think of sleepy cues, as yawning, as rubbing your eyes, things like these. These are very, very late sleepy cues. If your baby is rubbing their eyes or yawning, they probably should have been in bed 10 minutes ago. The first sleepy cues that you're going to be looking at is slowed down motion. So if you're, maybe you have a toddler and they're running around, so some kids get super hyper when they're really, really overtired. So you might be thinking, well, that's not what they do. But if you look at them before they get really hyper, they'll start to slow down. Maybe they pick up a book, maybe they're playing and they start, building their blocks a little bit slower. Maybe they come and rub against your leg for a second. They tend to just slow down a little bit. Before a baby, you'll notice they're not looking around as much. They, they might move their hands less. They might kick their legs less when they're starting to get sleepy. And you'll start to see, their sounds tend to be a little bit slower as well. So instead of babbling as much, they might slow their sounds down. These are like very subtle cues to watch out for. They're the first sleepy cues that you're going to follow. So this is going to help you personalize a sleep routine for your baby. So instead of just following the exact 2 hours, you might find that your baby needs to be awake for 2 hours and 10 minutes, or they might need to be awake for 1 hour and 50 minutes. It's going to change a little bit depending on your actual baby. And then that's how you're going to be developing the circadian rhythm. So again, working with the circadian rhythm. So I just want to recap some of that for you guys in a minute. And then implementing the routine, starting with bedtime is going to be the easiest time to implement your new routine, because there's a lot of sleep pressure that happens during the day and it builds up. And then it's easiest for your baby to fall asleep between 6 to 8 p.m. So start your new routine. Start with bedtime when there's lots of sleep pressure. Stay consistent and try the new routine for a full week before adjusting anything. And then when you start adjusting, just do one thing at a time. I know it's really easy sometimes when we're trying to switch stuff with sleep or with anything, I think with our babies, is to try to switch it all at once, because you're like, well, nothing's working. My baby's still waking up at night. They're still not napping during the day. So I'm just going to try something completely new. I'm going to go onto Google. But that's not how we find out what the problem is. By shifting one thing at a time, you might discover it's just that one thing that's wrong, and then everything else falls into place, like shifting their nap times by 5 minutes or 15 minutes. I don't know if there was anything else I wanted to say about the implementation. Staying consistent is a really big one. Now, some of you might be here tonight with really, really bad sleep for your babies, and some of you might be here with just okay sleep and you just want it to get better. If your sleep is really, really bad, you might decide to work with us. Great. We can fix everything in 2 weeks, which of course sounds super crazy because you're like, maybe you've been dealing with this for months or years. But if you are dealing with a complete shift that needs to happen, then definitely start with the bedtime and definitely stay consistent and try not to do crazy things outside the house when you're implementing that new schedule. So for example, don't meet up at the park right in the middle of nap time. Once you have a routine and it's working and your baby is sleeping well, that it's totally fine to go to the park during nap time and just split the nap, have a bit of sleep on one side, a bit of sleep on the other. It is fine, because the circadian rhythm is already developed. And so throwing it off for one day, their brain is not going to be signaled that, oh my goodness, we need a whole new sleep schedule. It's just going to be like, oh, spanner in the works, and then move on the next day back to it. But if you're trying to start a new schedule with your baby, just set aside a week or 2 weeks where you don't do anything within those nap times. Just go out in between them. Or if you're going to go out for the morning or the afternoon nap and do those naps in the car or the stroller, just so somewhere where it's calm and they can still fall asleep. And then I didn't talk a lot about overnight, but with the circadian rhythm, you can also set it overnight to keep sleeping. So, if you have a newborn, they do need to be fed between every 2 to 4 hours. So there's not, to be honest, a lot you can do with a newborn. If they're waking up every hour, you can comfort them and do other things instead of feeding them, and then push them out to at least 2 hours. The average newborn is probably going to feed between 3 to 4 hours, but if they are hungry every 2 hours and they're taking a full feed, then don't refuse that feed. They need it for their development and growth. And then as they're getting older, once they're past 4 months, you can drop down to 2 feeds overnight. So a 4-month-old can do a bedtime of between 6 to 7 p.m. They can do 1 feed before midnight, 1 feed after midnight, and then wake up again between 6 and 7 a.m. So if your baby is waking up more frequently than that for feeds, you can start training the circadian rhythm to sleep longer. And again, how you do that is by using all the things we talked about, keeping it dark, keeping the temperature right, not a lot of activity. So this is a really big one overnight, is the activity. So a baby who's waking up maybe every 2 hours, who's 8 months old, so then moving on from, 4 months old, then your baby can start sleeping through the night between 5 to 6 months old, which sounds really, really early, but it's definitely possible. If your baby has good weight gain and is taking good feeds during the day, and especially if they start solids, it really, really helps. They don't have to start solids. They can sleep 11 to 12 hours overnight without waking up for a feed. Now, probably most of you here tonight, your baby's not doing that, because otherwise you wouldn't be here listening to me. And I will try to wrap this up really quickly. I know it's already 8:27, but just going back to the overnight. So if your baby is waking up frequently and you're going in and you're talking to them, maybe you're turning the light on, you're offering them feeds, you're rocking them. This is all activity. This is all signaling to the circadian rhythm that it's time to be awake. So then the next night when you want your baby to sleep through, of course, they're going to wake up, because the circadian rhythm now knows it's time to wake up, even though it's midnight. So things that you can do if you don't want to do full-on sleep training just yet, but you just want to implement some stuff to help your baby sleep better, is when your baby wakes up, leave them a few minutes and see if they fall back asleep. If they start escalating and you know that you have to go in, even if you end up feeding them, keep it very dark in the room, maybe a very small nightlight or just like your phone. Keep it very quiet. Don't talk to your baby. The less eye contact, the better. The less activity. You do not want to be signaling to their brain that this is awake time. And so even if you are feeding them, we're keeping an absolute minimum contact. And that will start to signal to the circadian rhythm that this is not an awake time. This is a bedtime to stay asleep. Of course, there's a lot more involved in getting your baby to sleep through the night, but these are some simple things to start with, because I can't give you a full overload of information tonight. I do not want to confuse everyone. So just a little recap before I sign off with you guys. The circadian rhythm and utilizing it for sleep. We're going to start with an age-appropriate routine or schedule, which I did mention briefly how to get to, and I will send you guys an email later with a link to find the routines so you know where to start. Use light during the day, so lots and lots of sunshine, morning and afternoon. And when I say lots, I mean just consistently. It doesn't have to be an hour. It can just be a few minutes in the morning and a few minutes in the afternoon. For toddlers, the more in the afternoon, the better. So if you can get your toddler a full hour of sunshine, I know that sounds like a lot, but if you can like set them up with a water table in the summer or playing bubbles or some sort of outside activity, maybe you're taking them for a walk, maybe you're taking them to the splash pad, but a full hour of sunshine for a toddler and even just a few minutes for a baby is really going to signal to their body to get lots of serotonin. And then light on the opposite side, of which is darkness. We want to use blackout curtains. We want to make the room as dark as possible. A really good test is taking a book into your baby's room and seeing if you can read it. If you can read it, there is too much light in that room. So I know that sounds super crazy. It's very, very dark, but blackout curtains are really great. If you don't have blackout curtains, but you want to start, just block up those windows, put some cardboard in the windows. I know that's going to be super tacky, but just something in the windows to stop the light from coming in. Tape the curtains shut if you have to, whatever you have to do just to get your baby sleeping better. And then once the circadian rhythm is developed and understands this is bedtime, you can take some of that stuff away. You don't have to have blackout curtains unless your baby is extremely sensitive to the light. So using the darkness, so your baby has melatonin, food. So if you breast milk, or also don't really touch a lot on food for toddlers, just because we're trying to get through everything in such a short amount of time. But feeding your baby, your toddler, foods enriched with iron, magnesium, calcium, basically a very well-rounded diet for a toddler. A whole food diet is really going to help the circadian rhythm be developed too, and then less milk and everything overnight. So if your baby is feeding during the day an appropriate amount, they shouldn't need to eat overnight. And if they start eating overnight, like breast milk or having a bottle of milk overnight, it's usually just a behavioral habit. And it's much easier to get rid of if they're having enough food during the day. And then activities again during the day. So using those, tummy time, playing, taking your toddler outside, all those activities are going to signal to the circadian rhythm this is daytime, and then keeping activities to an absolute low, absolute minimum at night so the body knows that it's not time to be awake. And then lastly, you're going to be taking notes as you're implementing a new routine with your baby and adjusting slightly. So if you notice that your baby, goes to sleep at a certain time, but they're waking up after not a very good nap, maybe only a 20-minute nap, you're going to adjust. You're going to go, okay, maybe they're overtired. So less sleep pressure, or maybe they're undertired, so then try more sleep pressure and just slightly adjust. You can also send me a message if you need some help there, but I'm confident a lot of you can do this without me. So the gift voucher for you guys is 10% off your sleep package. The code is Circadian Rhythm. You can screenshot this if you want. And it's valid for 3 months. So anytime you want to use that 10% off, just send me a message. If you were in this masterclass tonight, tell me the code was Circadian Rhythm and you will get 10% off your virtual sleep package. And just to talk quickly about that, I don't want to keep you guys, I'm sure you have families to get back to. The sleep package includes a free sleep assessment call before you book anything. So if you think you want to move forward, but you're hesitant, just there's a link that I'll be sending you guys, or you can ask me for it directly. You can book a free sleep assessment call. We'll chat. You'll chat to me or you'll chat to Angela, and we'll talk about options for what your baby needs. And if you like what you're hearing, then you can move forward with the sleep package. We'll give you the 10% off, and then you get a personalized sleep plan. That's just for you and your baby. None of the stuff we give you is like a one size fits all. It's all just for you and your baby based on what you've told us and what we're seeing. And then we're going to do a 1 hour consultation to prep you for the sleep training. We're going to explain everything that's in the sleep plan. You can ask all the questions. We'll be super thorough about that. And then we'll choose a start date. And it's going to be 2 weeks for most sleep training methods. If it's a super gentle method, it can take up to 3 weeks, and we will stick with you the whole time. And we're going to be doing daily follow-ups. That's why we're so successful, is because we're not just handing you a sleep plan and walking away, but we're going to stay with you and implement it with you every single day. We're going to be checking in. We're going to have a Google log that you can fill out every day. We're going to be checking in every night, and we're going to be making adjustments as needed. So all that stuff I talked about today about, you know, adjusting the naps back and forth, we're going to do that for you. When you're sleep training with us, you don't have to do the brain work. We're going to do the brain work. We're going to brainstorm it all, and we're going to tell you what to do. And it's going to be successful. And then we're going to sign you off, and your baby is going to be sleeping through the night. If they're younger than 6 months, they're going to have 1 to 2 feeds, but past 6 months, they're going to be sleeping 11 to 12 hours overnight. They're going to have a nap routine every day, either a nap routine or a nap schedule, depending what their temperament is and depending what you prefer. That's going to be fully implemented. They're going to fall asleep by themselves. You can still do bedtime. You can still nurse them when you want, but they're going to be falling asleep with you outside the room. And they're going to be sleeping through the night and sleeping independently through the night as well. So thank you so much for being here today, you guys. If you have any questions, let me pop over to the chat box, but if you have any questions, you can send them to snuggleconsulting@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media. That Instagram there, Snuggle and Sleep, is where you can find all of the sleep routines. Facebook has them too. And I also have a Facebook group that's linked on all of my socials. It's a free Facebook group for sleep support. You can ask any questions on there too. So feel free to email me your questions. But if you have questions down the track and you want to just join the Facebook group so you don't forget my contact, I'll send that Facebook group link out afterwards as well. Let me just pop over to the chat. Oh yeah, so there's some questions here. Jessica asked, how do you begin healthy sleep habits with a newborn? I'm going to go back to turning that off. Okay. So healthy sleep habits with a newborn. The circadian rhythm that we talked about, you can start implementing some of that now. So even though the circadian rhythm is not going to be fully developed until later, the habits that you start doing now, a lot of it is for yourself as a parent. So if you're doing those things now, then you'll keep doing those things in your baby's 3-4 months, because we can't always remember day to day as our babies are changing. You know, as parents, it's like you don't remember necessarily, oh, in 3 months from now, I'm going to start this. So if you start those habits now with the sunshine and the waking up and the routines, they're just going to become part of your life. So a few things. I will also send you, Jessica, a free newborn sleep guide that I have that has like specific newborn habits. But we're going to be using very quickly the 5 S's for newborns. It's going to be swaddling, shushing, be like white noise or just like shushing yourself. Swaying, so that's like rocking, or you know, rocking in a bassinet or something. Side settling is huge for newborns. So if you're trying to settle your baby on their back, unlikely that a newborn's going to fall asleep, but if you turn them on their side, it's much more comfortable. And sucking, so highly recommend a pacifier. Some newborns do not like to take a pacifier, but I do find that most newborns will take the MAM pacifier, which is MAM. So try that one, or try the Avent one. They're both extremely different types. The Avent one is the very, very round one, and the MAM one is the very flat one. So depending on your baby's suck and how they can put their lips around, their mouth around something, it's probably either going to be the MAM or the Avent. So do those 5 S's with your newborn, and then start the routine and start the, you know, doing the naps in the darkness, start giving them light during the day, and start the activity routines as well. That's going to really help the circadian rhythm. Christina had a question about, she has a 9-month-old. She's gotten horrible about overnight sleep. She's waking a lot, every half an hour to every 2 hours. She used to sleep for 4-hour blocks until that 4-month regression. And within the last month, she's really starting fighting bedtime as well. I'm imagining that, Christina, that you are putting your baby to sleep every night, that she is not falling asleep by herself. Because the first stepping stone to a baby sleeping through the night is that they can fall asleep by themselves. So a very brief overview of what overnight sleep looks for. Back to that question, sorry. Is it's going to be in 2-hour segments. So we're going to get REM sleep, which is your rapid eye movement sleep. That's a very light sleep where you're dreaming a lot. And then you're going to get your deep sleep, which is like non-REM sleep. So that's where you're not dreaming. You're just like, that's where everything is resetting. That's where you're remembering things that happened during the day. That's where you're storing memories. That's where your baby's learning stuff. That's where growth happens. So both of those sleeps are really, really important. And your baby will constantly, same as adults, will cycle those overnight. So we'll go on to REM sleep and non-REM sleep, REM sleep and non-REM sleep. And when you get into the REM sleep, which is the light sleep, often that's when a baby will wake up because it's a little bit lighter. And so what you're trying to do is set your baby up for success to sleep through the night by letting them fall asleep independently. So then when they go through that REM sleep and they have a slight wake up, everything is exactly the same as how it was when they fell asleep, and they can keep sleeping. So a really quick example is, if you think about it as an adult, you fall asleep with your pillow and say your pillow slips off the bed. Then when you go through that light sleep, you're probably going to wake up and go, where's my pillow? And you're going to go grab your pillow and put it back in. So the same for a baby. If you're, say, nursing to sleep, rocking to sleep, patting to sleep, any of those things, when they go through that REM sleep and that's not happening anymore, they're going to wake up and go, I need that happening again. But of course, that's not going to be automatic. So then they're going to cry and wait for you to come in, and it's going to be a whole ordeal. If she's waking every half hour to every 2 hours, it means she's probably never, ever getting into a deep sleep. Which is then causing her to be overtired, which is then causing her to wake up even more. So it sounds like a very vicious cycle. I would say in your case, you probably have a very good case to work with us. If that's something you wanted to do, we can talk about it separately. You can book a free sleep assessment call if you want to get some one-on-one, Christina. It's definitely something you can deal with yourself if you have the tools, but I'm imagining you're probably very, very exhausted at this point if your baby is waking up that often overnight. I just had that myself because we just came back from a 6-week trip internationally. And we were all jet lagged. So my baby was waking up every 30 minutes. When I said you're also 8 weeks pregnant. So yes, you're definitely tired. Emily asked, how long of a nap is it good for a 2-year-old, and how long are they continue to nap? Is it really 3 to 4 years? A 2-year-old usually would nap between 1 to 2 hours. 1.5 hours is a pretty usual length. 1 hour, I wouldn't be concerned if it was just 1 hour. Depending on the wake up time, if between 7 and 8, then their nap will be around 1 p.m. and I would expect them to nap till either 2, 2:30 or even 3 p.m. Would not let them nap longer than 2 hours during the day. That's really going to impact their bedtime and how much they sleep overnight. A lot of kids will have naps. If you implement a good nap routine and they're sticking with it, they will keep it to 3 to 4 years. Otherwise, once they drop their nap, which sometimes can be when they're around 2.5, is that you can implement quiet time. So that just gives mom a break, and it also gives your toddler to reset during the day so they're not super overtired by bedtime, even if they don't need a full nap. So Emily, if you're a little one, he stops napping, say, before age 3, you can still let him stay in his crib or his bedroom for a good 45 minutes with just some books, something he can't destroy, some board books or some quiet blocks. That way everybody gets a break, including him, so he's reset for the night and he's not super overtired. Mary says, my toddler gets very anxious and melts down when she wakes up alone in bed. She climbs into our bed. We bring her back to bed, but she tends to take a long time to settle. She finally falls asleep, only sleeps for maybe an hour or 2 before trying to join her bed again. I'm not sure how old your toddler is. It sounds like she's going through separation anxiety, which can peak a few times throughout babyhood and childhood. We usually see it start appearing around 9 months, then 12 months, 18 months, and then again just somewhere between age 2 to 3, usually it appears again. Things that you can do for separation anxiety, helping it during the day. So helping your toddler to understand that you're not going, if you are outside the room, you're not actually gone. That way during the night when she wakes up, she knows that you're not gone, you're still there in the house. She's just that you're in a separate room to her. So working on it during the day is a really good technique for separation anxiety. Going to the bathroom without her. I'm not sure what your everyday life looks like, your day-to-day life looks like, but if she's by your side 24/7 and she's very clingy and she is having that separation anxiety, working on it during the daytime when she's awake and fully functioning, understand what's going on is going to be really helpful to then bring it into the bedtime and the overnight. A really good method for an anxious toddler who really needs you to be close to them is called gradual withdrawal. Feel free to message me for tips about it, or you can Google it online. People are even using ChatGPT for sleep and stuff these days. So the only thing is it's not going to be super personalized. It's just going to be a little bit generic. But Gradual withdrawal is the method where you would go into your child's bedroom every time they wake up, and you would help them fall asleep back in their bed, and you would do that. And then after a few nights, you would shift away from their bed a little bit, and you would be shifting out until they're falling asleep and staying asleep without you in the room. Because you can learn to fall asleep without you, but you just want to make sure you're helping that anxiety. We never want to work against the body, even circadian rhythm, everything I talked about. We want to work with your baby's body. And that's what holistic means. Holistic means working with the whole body. So especially for a toddler who has a very good understanding, you can also write up a sleep routine so that they can see. You can make sure they have a stuffy that they go to bed with, and you can explain that the stuffy needs to sleep with them overnight. So when they wake up, you can say, hey, your stuffy's still in bed here, your stuffy needs to sleep. And all of this visual stuff that your child can see, because they're not just a baby anymore. A toddler does have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. Christina said, yeah, her baby only falls asleep on her own in the car or the stroller. So yes, definitely start working, especially with you 8 weeks pregnant. The first trimester is so exhausting. So definitely start working on, you can tackle it all at once. But if that sounds really, really overwhelming, start with falling asleep by getting your baby to fall asleep by themselves, and then you can move on to sleeping through the night. Dave says, how calming baths can be. My 7-month son is extremely active and energetic. For him, baths are an opportunity to splash and go to town. Is there a way to make sure baths are more calming? So the bath in itself doesn't actually have to be a super calming experience. The natural temperature drop that happens ends up being calming after they come out. And then I would recommend after your 7-month comes out of the shower. I think it's great that he loves a bath. I love it when kids love water. It's actually it's really good therapy. It's very good for them, just for so many reasons. So I think it's great. But after he gets out of the bath, maybe do some lotion, baby massage. You can look videos on YouTube of baby massage for their feet. That's super calming. And then if bath time is not actually physically calming him down, it will start to send the signals to him, but then do something after bath time that's going to wind him down. And that's something that we didn't talk about really tonight at all. I know it's already 8:43, so I don't want to keep you guys. But doing a wind down routine before bed really sends those signals to the brain that we're getting ready for sleep. So even if it's just 15 minutes, 30 minutes, even better. And that's including, a diaper change and getting pajamas on, turning on some white noise, reading some books, singing some songs, doing some cuddles. Those things are all going to send signals to him that it's time to go to bed. So even if you get super hyped up during the bath, once he gets out and that temperature drops, it's going to start sending signals, and then you can do the wind down routine. That looks like all of the questions tonight. But if you guys want to send me an email, feel free, and I'll be sending you an email with a replay from tonight. And the Facebook group you can ask questions on as well. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. And if anybody wants to work with me, we can just go ahead with a free sleep assessment call and chat one-on-one about your baby's sleep. And feel free to send my business and my socials to your friends as well. Have a good night.